Andy's just winked at me, so it means we're not ready to go.
This is SoapBox Radio.
Potting it out there.
Potting it out there with my lime boots. The Lifestyle Edit.
Hey guys, it's Ryan. It's a Thursday afternoon at 4 o'clock and it's time for SoapBox Radio. Welcome to SoapBox Radio, and today we chat about a bit of an artsy issue, a show I'm really looking forward to as we consider the state of the theatre and performing arts here in South Africa. Thank you for the positive response I've been getting since last week's show on the Cape Town water issue, or the crisis that just actually isn't a crisis as we discussed last week. We truly touched on only a few of the issues around this topic, and I have begun planning a second show which will take place late in April to further consider the issue and hopefully plot some improvements in the situation. Stay tuned for details on that show. Back to today's show, let's turn our minds to what is been happening or not happening, as the case may be, in the performing arts space here in South Africa.
Yo, what's up?
Baby, let's go!
So the state of the arts in South Africa is something which really concerns me. In my mind, we as South Africans don't seem to truly appreciate and value this craft. A live performance, be it in the theatre, dance, or any other expression of interpretation, is such a personal expression of the performer's inner humanity, and I've yet to find a performance that did not move me on some level. So it saddens me greatly when something undertaken at this level is not appreciated by fellow South Africans. I love sitting as close to the front as I can at each performance. To me, it brings me into the space that the artist occupies as they lay themselves bare, and they literally are laying themselves bare at each performance. Someone who is passionate about the arts here in South Africa and has been on my radar for some time is Louw Breytenbach, my guest in the studio today. Louw received a scholarship to the New York School of Film and Television in 2007. In 2008 saw Louw land a feature role on local South African soapie Sevendalon. In 2010, Louw was the third place winner in the Talent America competition held in New York, and also took home the Acting Performer of the Year award. Louw holds a variety of qualifications, including a diploma in speech and a certificate in creative writing and journalism. He is an accredited adjudicator for various universities and cultural organizations, and a director of the National Arts Foundation of South Africa. And all of that achievement by a 28-year-old, can you believe it? And I've just checked his age is correct. Intro's done. Let's jump straight into today's discussion. Welcome, Louw.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have I summed up this dynamite package correctly?
Yeah, I think so, and I'm hoping that there's a lot more to come. I've been very blessed so far with a full life, so I'm hoping we can do some more for the arts.
100%. This is what you've done by the 28. I'd love to see what you're doing just 10 more years from now, you know?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, talk to me about growing up, and what was Louw dreaming about in those days as a youngster?
I think Louw has always been a bit of a shy guy, and I still up to today, I still have two assets of my personality. One is completely introverted, and one can adapt myself to where I want to be on stage and play a character. And I think that's where the love of acting came about, was always learning to put on this mask to not be the shy, withdrawn person that I feel that I am inside. And as I was saying to you off air, when I was in 6th grade, my parents decided to push me into drama classes because I was never hanging with people my own age. I was always with the teachers. Did very well when I had to perform on stage, but off of stage, I could barely converse with anyone.
Really?
So
So when you started doing drama back in those days, was it a physical effort to put yourself in that space to say, okay, let's transition and let's now do this thing that we're doing, or did it just flow naturally for you, even though you call yourself an introvert?
There were two phases with that as well. If I had to do a solo performance, I was all in, but the moment I had to work in a group, it was as if I got this complete stage fright, and I just went, my word, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to talk to people. I don't know how to interact with them. And I think the drama classes awoken something that I already had inside, and a desire that I had inside to want to interact and to want to tell stories on stage and play various characters. And when I was young, I was always dreaming about one day I wanted to be a lawyer, and then I wanted to be a doctor, and then a teacher. I could never decide on one career. So I thought, well, be an actor, because then you can be everything.
There we go. What was I going to ask you now, as you say that to me? Something was coming to my mind there. Okay. Well, you finished studying in 2011 and jumped straight into the theatre project the next year, 2012.
Yeah.
Using your using money you had earmarked for a house deposit. You put that straight into the theatre. Talk to me about that.
That was, quite an interesting jump that I made, because the plan was never to necessarily go into theatre straight away. I had a very wonderful landlord, Peter, and at that stage I had a very small studio. I think I had about 30 students, and by the end of 2011 I gave all of them notice, because I used the money from the drama classes to basically pay for my studies. And I said to all of them, listen, thank you so much, I'm going overseas, the Hollywood dream is awaiting, and my Oscar's waiting for me, so that's what I'm going to do with my life. And Peter came to me, the landlord, when I went to say that, listen, we're going to move to another, or we're giving up the premises rather, I'm going to move overseas and that's what I want to do with my life. And he said, but Louw, you told me you always wanted to have a theatre. And I said to him, yeah, but that's like one day. I'm 21, I'm not ready to open a theatre right now. And he said, okay, no, cool. And he came back the second day and the third day, and every time I had the same answer. And by the fourth time he came, he said that he had a little restaurant located so close to the shop that I owned. It was literally just across the road, and somehow convinced me to go have a look. And mind you, this restaurant had been shut down because the people didn't pay, so he basically overnight turned off the electricity. And when I walked in there 6 months later, they never cleaned out the fridges or anything.
It was the full effect of the 6 months
a disaster. It was a disaster. So when I walked in there, it didn't scream theatre at all. It screamed like health hazard. It was quite a shock to the system. And I said to him, there's no way I'm not doing a theatre in here. And he said, just think about it. Use your imagination and think about what it can be. And so he was there the 6th day to the 7th day, and literally on the 10th day we were standing in the shop again. Every day he convinced me to walk with him across the street, go into the restaurant, and then we stand for a full 10 minutes without saying anything. And he says, just imagine what it can be. And on the 10th time I said to him, Peter, I'm not doing this. And his words, after a swear word or two, which I won't repeat, was literally like, Louw, make up your mind. And he said to me, do you want to be ordinary or do you want to chase a dream? And those words stuck with me all the way from 2011, and that basically shaped live arts theatre what it is today. And it shaped me as a person so much to ask myself constantly, every time when I have doubt and every time that I'm scared, is, do I want to chase a dream or do I want to remain ordinary? And that was the birth of Live Arts Theatre. So I'm signed on the dotted line to rent this space now.
Did your stomach drop as you signed?
Oh, I was excited.
You were fully on board.
Yes, no, I was sold. I phoned my dad and I'm like, Dad, I'm opening a theatre. My dad's okay, with what money? And I'm like, I don't know, but I have the money that I saved for my car. And you guys are obviously going to help me. And my dad was just like, no, sorry, I don't think we are, because for 3 years you were nagging and going on about going overseas. So for 3 years we made every effort to get you overseas, and now all of a sudden you want a theatre. So, which you said was like your long-term vision. There was no plan for this at that stage. So you got to prove to us that you wanted yourself and you're going to work for it yourself. And I think that was the best parenting that they could have done as well, because from that October I worked straight through, didn't go on the December family holiday, and literally scraped my way through up to February when my first rent check was due. And in February I had the exact amount of students, 42 on the dot, that we needed to open our doors. And that was the birth of the theatre. We put a little ad in the Boxburg Advertiser at that stage to ask the community if they want to donate any lighting equipment, or if someone has old paint cans at home or whatever they can bring. And that was the birth of our props room as well, and our whole costume room. So the theatre house today has a full costume room, full props room, and full lighting set as well.
With no donations, eh?
All donations.
That was something I found quite interesting. It sounds like the early days of 2012, everyone really pitched in to help, and as you say, you didn't take donations. Was that a matter of principle for you? That just like your dad had said to you, need to do this on your own. So was that a decision you then took? Yeah,
I think that was one of the big things, is we didn't want any money to come from anywhere. We said that if we're going to do this theatre, it's a theatre for the community, by the community. So it had to be a community project, and there's no, or at that stage there was no use for me to ask for handouts or get financial help from somewhere, because that wouldn't have taught me anything. And I was reminded by this by my dad pretty often, because I'm like, we can just get donations. donations and we'll do this. And he's like, no, that's not how it works.
Sure, quite
so
amazing.
yeah, you have to work for what you want in life. And I think it shaped so much of who I am today. And we work with those same principles and we instill them in our kids when we teach them about drama as well. Our classes are not just focused on acting, but the business of acting and how to sell yourself. How do you make it work on your own when no one's giving you handouts and when no one's clapping for you or cheering for you to become the next Brad Pitt? What do you do? Because everywhere there's artists and everywhere there's people struggling. You're not more special than any other person, but you have to find a way to make your talent shine and to let your talent be noticed.
We were talking about that before the show in terms of this broader business model that you employ, and it's encouraging to hear how you are teaching these life skills to the children, even if they are there for the acting. We'll talk about your broad range of services now, but it's good that they're learning, because I think that's often a problem with a lot of artists that I see. People who are either whether you're an artist in terms of your art or your photography or acting, they can do that well, but when it comes to monetizing and running a business using this art form, they often find themselves falling short.
Definitely, and that's the thing is universities and formal institutions are great at teaching you the skill of acting or presenting or how the industry works, but no one tells you how to sell yourself as a business or how to make it work when you're not necessarily getting bookings in or not being featured on a TV soap. What do you do to make that little dry spell worth your while? You can actually use your talent.
Talk to me, Louw, about the concept of a combination of acting academy and theatre as your business model. Talk us through that one.
So this is basically, like I said, when I started paving my way in the industry, I used the acting classes as a way to pay my studies, pay my way forward. It was a bit of, I call it in Afrikaans, snoepie geld. It was my tax shop money. And basically in doing that, I've gained so much value in instilling in other people's lives and adding to their lives that actually becomes more rewarding than the money itself. So what we did is combine the art of having the shows and the magic of the shows and the wowness of what theatre is with the actual people that need to go into theatre. Because if we want theatre to sustain in South Africa and we want a future for theatre in South Africa, we need to equip students with what the value of live theatre is. Otherwise it's going to die out so quickly with no people being invested or interested in what this form of entertainment is, because we need to remind ourselves that kids today are immersed with so many other forms of digital entertainment. If they don't realize what the value of live entertainment is, we're going to lose a whole generation of a possible audience.
Frightening concept. We were talking about it just now, and I want to take up that conversation with you guys. When we come back, make sure you send through your questions and comments for Louw on Twitter or Facebook. We want to chat to you guys, want you to be part of the show. We'll be back shortly with Louw.
This is SoapBox Radio.
Potting it out there.
Potting it out there with My Lime Boots. The Lifestyle Edit.
Find My Lime Boots on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
At My Lime Boots. And on YouTube.
At My Lime Boots Live.
Great, I'm back chatting to Louw this afternoon, owner of Live Arts Little Theatre, and what he's doing to promote theatre here in South Africa. Louw, talk to me, let's have the conversation. Talk to me about the state of the arts world here in South Africa.
I think it's interesting because we have so many new shows and people daring to do new things. We have shows that are pushing new boundaries. I think like Hedwig and the Angry Inch that's showing at the moment is a show that pushes boundaries, and people are not afraid to speak their minds anymore, which is wonderful, because finally, after a very long dry spell in South African theatre, people are creating again. The question, however, is, are we able to sustain growth in theatre, or are we just having massive openings for new shows, or can we get to a point where we cultivate a culture of theatre in South Africa where we also can have shows that are running for 10-20 years like they do on Broadway, because people come to see them over and over again, regardless if you have seen Lion King once, you go back every time you're on Broadway, you go see Chicago or your Cats or whatever, you come back to them every time.
How do we create that culture in South Africa? Because I think we definitely lacking that culture.
I think we missed a a generation somewhere in cultivating a theatre audience, and that's why we have this little dry spell in between, where only now, very recently, a lot of public schools started adding dramatic arts as a subject choice and opening up this world of theatre to students and taking students out on field trips again and exposing them to theatre, where if we look even 5 or 10 years ago, only your private schools and only your top private schools at that offered art or dramatic arts as a subject. So we have some catching up to do, and I think we're starting to bridge that gap where people are creating content again. Now we need to start educating people about why it's so important to support theatre and what the difference is between entertainment that drains you when you sit mindlessly in front of a TV screen watching episode after episode, or watching something that will challenge your way of thought. And I think we've become so numb to people who challenge us, because you're constantly challenged at work, you're challenged on Facebook, you're challenged for public opinion, that you don't necessarily want something to challenge you intellectually. But what people forget up until they walk into a theatre is that theatre is energizing and it revives the soul, it feeds the soul, and the moment they experience that, their whole outlook of theatre changes. So if we can get people into theatre just to experience that, I think we're on the right path already.
Why do you think theatre does that? I know that feeling. I love going to the theatre, and like I was saying in the introduction, the closer I can sit to the stage, if I can watch you as the actor, I feel like I'm part of it. Maybe it's a dream I've always had to want to do something like that, and I just don't have the talent for that. But why do you think theatre is so alive?
I think there's something magical about the energy exchange in live theatre that you don't get from TV. And there's something about someone chasing their dream with everything they are. It's inspiring to see someone play their heart out and fully commit to a character up to a point that you can't see the difference between who's the character and who's the actual person. And when someone commits that fully to a cause, it's inspiring to see that they are living their dream right in front of you. Because I think for most actors, I think if you don't have that passion or you don't have that dream, you can't be on stage. It simply won't sell. But when you see someone living their passion and becoming alive on stage, that does something to you and makes you want to go, I want to do that. I want to chase my dream. I can relate to that character. And I think that's where the human connection comes in, because then all of a sudden we relate to the character's story and their emotional experience, and we move away from a self-centered focus to, oh my word, there's someone else in the world going through exactly what I'm experiencing.
Sure. Interesting. What was... okay, how do you as Louw contribute towards working against the sense of apathy? So we understand we've got the sense of apathy, and it's starting to change, as you said. Through what you're doing, how are you bringing about a change?
I think what makes us unique is the fact that, as I said earlier, we're a community theatre. Our roots are based in the community. So we're not waiting for people to come to the Louw Theatre House. We're drawing people in that are living around us. Some of my clients literally live in the houses next door, or coming from across the street. Stepping Stones, a primary school that's literally across the street from us. So we go out into the public, and we have a very good footing with most of the local newspapers and news channels in the East Rand. And we literally work from the grassroots up with people that act in our plays, the people that we get to perform at our theatre. Although a lot of them are professional actors, we also leave a very big space for stand-up comedians and cabaret artists that are from the community. And I think that makes the difference at the end of the day, to get people involved. And you can't take them somewhere where you haven't been. So we need to get actors to move into their communities and their spheres and draw people into the theatre, instead of putting an advert on radio or on TV, although that's wonderful to draw in the general public that already go to the theatre. If you want someone new to go to the theatre, you need to go to the schools and you need to go to the communities where people don't usually go to theatre and invite them and get them there by the busloads to experience theatre. Because if they experience it once, they will come back for more.
I see Vanessa has sent us a message on Facebook. Vanessa Killian says, the best choice we ever made was to have both my kids at Louw's drama school, formed them as young adults with confidence speaking in front of people and in the workplace. So when we come back, that's something that I want to chat about, because we were talking about that off air. Stay tuned, send us some of your thoughts and questions for Louw, but when we come back, we're going to talk about practical life skills application of what Louw's doing at the moment.
This is SoapBox Radio.
Potting it out there.
Potting it out there with My Line Boots. The Lifestyle Edit.
Find My Lime Boots on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
At My Lime Boots. And on YouTube.
At My Lime Boots Live.
I'm back this afternoon chatting to Louw Breytenbach, the owner and inspiration behind Live Arts Little Theatre. Is it Live Arts Little Theatre or was it changed to Live Arts Theatre?
We're now Louw Theatre House, so it stands for Live Arts Little Theatre, but it's such a mouthful.
Yes. Okay. Low from Louw.
There we go. There we go.
So tell me, we were talking just now about what the other practical applications are of the skills that you teach, not only for acting but confidence and certain other applications. Take us through a standard day at LOT. What happens?
Yeah. So the one thing that we do is we never have any auditions. I work from the standpoint that every person can learn to assert themselves. Every person can learn to better themselves through public speaking and just being grounded in who they are. And that's the outlook we work from. So a general lesson would consist of a relaxation exercise, voice warm-ups, and then we move into the theory of acting behind it. So we work with the SA Drama College syllabus, where every week there is a 30 to 35 minute theory lesson before we move over to the practical aspect. Because at the end of the day, if you want to be good on stage, you need the knowledge to back it up. Yes, definitely. And then we move into the practical aspect of it, addressing their fears and addressing their concerns. And once you get to know a child and you get to know where that little root is of insecurity, and you can remove that and equip them with the confidence to speak in front of people, or equip them to use their skills in debating, that's when you actually hit the nail on the head for setting someone up for their future, because then they can assert themselves in meetings. We often do debate classes where we would pair students up in a group, and we'll pair the teachers up in a group, and the students have to debate against the teachers. So we do bargaining deals, set up fake interviews, so where they're actually applying for a job as an actor in a musical, and we do auditions with them, film them on camera and play it back to them so that they can see where they lack some confidence or where something's not reading through when they're on the camera. So basically life skills that we're adding through drama.
So is it mainly drama focused? You also do dance and other disciplines?
The Louw Theatre House also has a ballet school. I obviously don't have the posture but or the nimble feet, but we do have a wonderful ballet teacher, Irene Weber, that performs the ballet classes there, and we have about 40 students in the ballet school at the moment.
What I really liked about what you were telling me beforehand is that a lot of people a lot of parents send their children to LOT in place, I'm going to use the word, in place of speech therapy. Talk us through that.
Yeah, definitely. I think in our culture, unfortunately, we've come to a stage where we often brand kids if we identify one or two patterns that's similar to a complete speech impairment. We would immediately go send that kid to a speech therapist. And many times kids are just shy, or they don't know where certain sounds are formed in the mouth because they didn't have a very good early childhood education, or some of the kids never went to a preschool, so they just went straight to grade 1, and then they're uncertain of where certain sounds are formed in the mouth. So it's not that they're incapable of making the sounds or incapable of speaking in front of people, it's just it was never taught. So the drama classes in a fun way removes the stigma of sending your child to speech therapy, and obviously if there is a valid speech impairment, we will refer them to a professional speech therapist that could help potentially with that problem. But in many cases it's just a lack of confidence, or it's simple exercises that could help use the muscles correctly to form those sounds.
Interesting you say, because about 2 weeks ago I had on the show two guys named Ryan and Gareth from an organisation called Satunda Upliftment Projects. And they are bringing early childhood development education to impoverished areas, to disadvantaged areas, to stop exactly what you're saying now. Children start coming to school and they haven't been through certain processes at an early childhood development stage, and he was quoting me the costs of what what it actually costs to rectify these problems if they are ignored as early in their early childhood development phases, and they come to school and now having to rectify that with speech therapy or whatever it is. It's a costly exercise.
And what you do is you already start off, the child already starts off on the back foot. So we try, and then that's where they start lacking the self-confidence to speak up in class or say that I don't understand something, or raise your hand in class. It's sometimes the most simple things that children falter with because they don't have the confidence to just raise their hand and say, I don't understand, or ma'am, sorry, I couldn't hear you, or ma'am, please move me closer to the board, I can't see. At the end of the day, there's sometimes kids that need glasses, but they're too afraid to speak up in class. So then you see them failing math, but you don't understand why, because the kid is clever. So then we attribute it to, it's not concentrating, ADHD,
and all the drugs that come with that.
Yes, and we're very fast to label children. I think Dr. Google is one of the worst things that could have happened to our time, because parents want the best for their kids. I don't think there's any parent on earth that maliciously wants to put their child on a back foot.
No, sure,
parents want the best for their kids. We just don't always know how to do that. So we jump onto Google and we think, oh my word, this is what my child has. And very often it's something as simple as self-confidence or small speech impairments that can be fixed just by correcting the speech pattern or the way the mouth is used as a muscle.
Okay. You guys recently moved premises from your early days. Talk us through that.
So that was a very, very exciting move. It's something that I've been dreaming about for many years, was to open a theatre house where, and the name theatre house to me is special as well, because our little motto at the studio is that you enter as a stranger but you leave as a friend. And the theatre house basically is a smaller environment. We used to be a 130-seater, and when we're done with the renovations now, will only be a 70-seater, but it creates a more intimate vibe. There will be a coffee shop at the new venue as well, and a little tea garden. We would really want to create that atmosphere of people coming home, and that, because that's what theatre should be. It should be like your homecoming. 100%. Every time you walk into the theatre, it should feel like you're at home. So that's the outlook where we're working from.
And you're still taking no donations, We spoke about no donations. That's really impressed me, I must tell you, just to know that you guys you're so passionate about what you're doing in a responsible way of doing it, Okay. What future plans have you got up your sleeve for Louw and for Louw? There's two questions in one there.
There's actually quite a few. I spoke to you off air. I said that we're in the process of planning to do just a live events venue in Johannesburg, so that's in the pipeline. And then we're also dabbling with a little TV production that we are dipping our feet in, so that should be quite exciting for both students and parents, and then
part of
for
a bigger
the theatre.
TV production,
part of a bigger TV production.
When will we see that?
I'm holding thumbs that it will still be this year, and hopefully we'll hear about it in the coming month or two if we have the green light to go ahead. So and then it should be on one of the major channels if we get the green light.
Wonderful. Are you still doing work with CapeNet?
I used to. I was a scriptwriter for CakeNet, and it was one of the most wonderful experiences that I've had in my career. And unfortunately, Chat No was cancelled in its third season, but what a run. It was a wonderful show. Wonderful music show. And if ever there's the opportunity to do something like that again, I'll definitely jump on that bandwagon.
What do you prefer, live performance or TV?
That's a very difficult question, because my heart is in theatre, but with live TV, you get the same energy rush. I think the only thing that kills me with live TV is the live deadlines as well. Hectic. And it's at least in a live performance you can fake it a little bit and get away with it. In live TV there's no margin for error. So.
Okay. Louw, what has life taught you on your journey so far? You've had an interesting life these few years. What has life taught you?
Sure, I think there have been many lessons, and especially in the last 2 years, I think with age there comes a certain maturity as well. And the last 2 years have been really tough in the industry, and I think the only thing you need to know is life goes on. That's the main thing. And theatre goes on. It will, if you're having a tough month, and I don't care in what line of business you are in, because all businesses in South Africa go through a dip at some point. But if you are resilient, if you are resourceful, it will go on. Your dream doesn't have to die just because it's facing a tough time. It will go on. You just have to be able to adapt to change and not be scared of change and be able to embrace it.
part of your story that I really like, and I said to you this before we started, was that you are a person who has a passion for arts, and you've made a business out of it.
Yeah.
So in our country, where we're looking for alternative employment structures, where people should be employing themselves, self-employed entrepreneurs, you're a shining example of someone who's taken their passion and is making something from it. So I commend you on that. I think it's wonderful, and I'm so grateful that you are able to share with us this afternoon in terms of how you've made that happen with some practical advice that's come through. You know.
I think one of the main things that we can teach our children, and especially creative ones, is that they constantly need to challenge themselves and look for loopholes, because unfortunately with TV and with theatre in the olden days, there were a lot of loopholes left by previous generations. Although they did some amazing groundbreaking work, they didn't have all the knowledge that our students have today. If you take a toddler, they already know how to work a phone and where all the buttons are and what the buttons do. And my high school kids will gladly explain in detail how to up your Wi-Fi and get it faster. So people are clever, and I think what the younger generation needs to do is they need to capitalize on the gaps left by the previous generation. And if they can do that, especially in theatre and in creative fields, they will always have money, they will always be employed, because that creates a module where you can constantly change and constantly adapt and regenerate that. So definitely.
Great. Well, unfortunately our time's come to the end, and that brings us to the end of today's show. Thank you for taking the time out to come and speak to us today, and I really wish you nothing but blessings. I wish you nothing but good fortune for your studio, for you as a person, for taking that leap of faith. Really well done, and everything of the best to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Louw. Guys, that was SoapBox Radio. Good to chat with you today. Next week's show will be a recording of a prior show, because I'll be away somewhere where there'll be no internet reception, so I can't bring a show to you, but we'll have something on. And then we have something quite interesting the week thereafter. We're chatting to a very special man who does personalized safaris and spent some time with the chimpanzees in Rwanda recently. We're going to be talking to Brad in 2 weeks' time, so make sure you hang around for that one and watch our social media, and you'll see when that show is coming live. That was SoapBox Radio, and I'm out of here.
You've been listening to SoapBox Radio.
Podding it out there with my line boots.